What's going down, Niner Faithful? What's going on YouTube? It's NinerJ49 coming back with another video. Um, so, as we've seen, as you guys, as NFL fans just watched, the Philadelphia Eagles, I did a reaction video of the final minutes on my channel. So if you guys haven't seen that video, go watch that video and then come back and watch this video. Because I touched up on this topic for a split second before I ended up making this video. For what you're watching. So, Nick Foles. Let's go back to Week 16 in LA at the LA Rams. Nick Foles and the Rams beat the Rams in LA, right? So, Eagles fans then were like, okay, well maybe Nick Foles is not what we think he is, because Eagles fans and NFL fans know who Nick Foles is. But when they went into the LA Rams and beat LA, I was very impressed because personally, I did not think that the Eagles would beat the Rams in LA. So with that being said, so they beat the Rams in Week 16. Fast forward to Week 17. He goes into Houston. Keep in mind, 2 away games against 2 very good football teams. Then he goes in Week 17, goes into Houston and beats the Texans at home. The Texans were at home. Beats the Texans at home. Then I'm like, okay, well, now the Eagles, excuse me. Week 15, he beat the Rams. Week 16, he beat the Texans. Then you go to Week 17, and he beat the Redskins, right? So then, obviously, the Bears beat the Vikings for the Eagles, pretty much for the Eagles, and the Eagles get into the playoffs, right? So then, when the Bears beat the Vikings to help the Eagles get into the playoffs, the Bears end up playing the Eagles in this wild card matchup today. Isn't that funny how that works? The Bears beat the Vikings for the Eagles to get in, and the Eagles get helped by the Bears and then beat the Bears. That's pretty funny. But should Nick Foles, this is the topic of the video, should Nick Foles be Philadelphia's future? Should Nick Foles be the franchise quarterback for Philadelphia? I'm just going to say one thing right now. This is a topic that's been discussed. A lot of people say no. A lot of people say yes. A lot of people think they're not sure. But let me get something straight before I get any farther. Nick Foles had more success than Carson Wentz this season. Nick Foles played better football for the Philadelphia Eagles this season. He showed out. He won big games, while Carson Wentz couldn't get it done. And I don't even think Carson Wentz could have won. If Carson Wentz was playing this game, I would have picked the Eagles. Well, I picked the Eagles to lose either way, but the Eagles wouldn't have beat the Bears if Carson Wentz was in. So Nick Foles wins big games. We've seen it in the Super Bowl. We've seen it in the NFC Championship last year. We've seen it all throughout the playoffs last year. And we've yet seen it again this year. So should Nick Foles be the future of the Philadelphia Eagles? Nick Foles is only 29 years old, okay? He still at least has, if he don't get injured, he still at least has 8 to 10 more years playing in the NFL. Well, maybe not 10. I'll say 7 to 9 years playing in the NFL. That's a very long time for a quarterback to be on the franchise, or to be in the franchise. Now, Carson Wentz, on the other hand, is 26 years old. So there's a 3-year difference in age. And I could see the Philadelphia Eagles letting go of Nick Foles and stick with Carson Wentz. But I said it in my previous videos. I said that if the Eagles go into Chicago, when I previewed these games and I made my wild card playoff picks, I said if the Eagles go into Chicago and beat the Bears, that Nick Foles should be the future of the Philadelphia Eagles. Whether, now this is the thing, they can't keep both quarterbacks on the roster. This is like a pickle in Philadelphia. They can't keep Carson Wentz and Nick Foles on the same roster because they can't afford it financially. They're not going to be able to afford Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. Basically, they're not going to be able to afford, to sum it up, they're not going to be able to afford two starting quarterback caliber. They're not going to be able to afford two starting caliber quarterbacks on the same roster. Whether that's trading Carson Wentz or whether that's trading Nick Foles, they're not going to be able to keep both of them. Should the Philadelphia Eagles move on from Carson Wentz and keep Nick Foles? This is a pickle. This is a very hard question, but personally, I think Nick Foles could very likely have more success within the next 5 to 7 years with the Eagles than Carson Wentz could. For one, Carson Wentz is coming off an ACL, which a lot of players can recover from an ACL, and it's not that an ACL. It is a bad injury. It's not really a major injury, but it's a decent amount of, and it's a decent injury. It's a pretty big injury, but a lot of quarterbacks and players in the NFL can come back from that. Tom Brady tore his ACL in 2008 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Carson Wentz tore it last year against the LA Rams. I believe it was week 15, 16, or 17. And Deshaun Watson tore his ACL last year, but Deshaun Watson had a great year and got the Texans back into the playoffs. So it's likable for Carson, or it's a highly likely chance for a player to come back from an ACL injury. But Carson Wentz really hasn't. He really hasn't come back from his injuries. He fractured his vertebrae, which was another big injury. And it's seemingly looking like Carson Wentz is kind of starting to go down the hill of Ryan Tannehill. But does that mean you move on from Carson Wentz and keep Nick Foles the franchise quarterback? This is the thing. I don't really know. But I'm going to say I think that Nick Foles could have more success with the Eagles for the next 5 to 7 years than Carson Wentz could. Nick Foles could have, you heard it right, Nick Foles, in my opinion, could have more success in the next 5 to 7 years than I think Carson Wentz could. Why? Because Nick Foles, it seems like Carson Wentz has been injury prone for all of this season, and obviously towards the ACL, you can't really help that, but I feel like Carson Wentz is starting to go down the route of Ryan Tannehill. I feel like this is going to be another situation like RG3 and Kirk Cousins in Washington years ago. And it's seemingly starting to look like that. So the Eagles obviously know they can't keep Nick Foles and they can't keep Carson Wentz on the same team. But should the Eagles move on from Carson Wentz or should they move on from Nick Foles? Nick Foles wins the bigger games. Nick Foles plays better under pressure. And yeah, he did it last year. I thought, oh wow, Nick Foles, won the Super Bowl, beat the Patriots, was a Super Bowl 52 MVP. Does that really mean that Nick Foles is the better quarterback? No, not really, but he did it for the second year in a row, and it kind of makes me wonder now. But personally, I think Nick Foles, like I said, could have more success with the Philadelphia Eagles for the next 5 to 7 years than Carson Wentz could. Does that mean you move on from Carson Wentz? I don't know, because Carson Wentz is still very young, and he's a good quarterback, but he's still very young. But Nick Foles is only three more years younger than him. Yes, that is a big difference, especially when you're playing in the NFL. But I don't really know how to put... Let me know what you guys think. Do the Eagles move on from Carson Wentz or Nick Foles? I don't want to sit here and say... I know I said it in my wild card round picks that if the Eagles beat the Bears, the Eagles should stick with Nick Foles for the future, but it's just very hard because Carson Wentz hasn't produced this season. He got injured again and fractured his vertebrae this season. I don't know. But I personally do think that Nick Foles can have more success than Carson Wentz on the Eagles for the next 5 to 7 years. Does that mean you move on from Carson Wentz? It's a very hard decision because with the Eagles being so with the Eagles having two talented quarterbacks on the roster, you can obviously say it's lopsided between who's having more success in bigger games and who's more clutch in bigger games, and that's Nick Foles. I just don't know. What do you guys think? Do the Eagles move on from Carson Wentz or Nick Foles? I don't want to say they move on from Carson Wentz, but I truly do feel like Nick Foles on the Eagles would have more success than Carson Wentz in the next 5 to 7 years. But I just don't want to sit here and say that you move on from Carson Wentz because he's still young. And if the Eagles end up getting rid of Nick Foles and then Carson Wentz gets hurt again next season, the Eagles are probably going to be wondering then. Because then it's going to really look like Nick Foles is really starting to go like Ryan Tannehill's career has been. Let me know what you guys think. Do the Eagles get rid of Nick Foles or Carson Wentz? I just don't know, but sometimes more half of me, majority of my inner body says that Nick Foles should be the future of Philadelphia. But then at the same time, Nick Foles is younger. Carson Wentz is younger. And I just don't want to say that yet. But I feel like Nick Foles would have more success than Carson Wentz in the next 5 to 7 years. Whether that's playing with the Eagles or not. But he'll be more successful within the next 5 to 7 years than I think Carson Wentz will be. So that's my thoughts. That's my take. But I'm not going to sit here and say that the Eagles should move on from Carson Wentz. I won't even support the move that Eagles should move on from Nick Foles. It's a very hard situation. And the Eagles are in a pickle. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Which quarterback should they get rid of? Which quarterback should they trade? Should they keep Nick Foles? Or should they keep Carson Wentz? I think Nick Foles would be more successful. But I don't want to say you move on from Carson Wentz. It's a very hard decision. It's a very hard topic. It's a very hard decision to make. But let me know what you guys think. It's up to you guys. Who do you guys think they should move on from? And tell me why. But that's going to wrap up the video. I said my thoughts, and I'm going to keep my thoughts. But I think Nick Foles will have more success than Carson Wentz for the next 5 to 7 years. But that's my thoughts, and let me know what you guys think. But at the end of the day, we'll all see what happens this offseason because it's looking to be like Nick Foles will be traded from the Eagles, in which a lot of Eagles fans could be upset. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. With that being said, it's NinerJ49, and as always, go Niners.